STEM fans, are you ready? Let's hear it for the world-class NASA STEM Stars team. From NASA centers across the country, we present Julie Blackett. Hello, STEM fans, and welcome to NASA STEM Stars, where students get the opportunity to connect firsthand with NASA engineers, scientists, and innovators. In the past several weeks, we have had conversations with several experts on advanced air mobility, or AAM, which is actually going to lead up to our culminating event, our panel discussion in late June. But today, we're connecting with Julie Blackett. She's a lead resource analyst from the Glenn Research Center in Ohio. And she's actually going to speak about her important role in managing the agency's multi-million-dollar portfolio with the Advanced Air Mobility Project, or AAM. So, Julie, how you doing today?
Great, David. Thank you for having me.
Well, we are so thankful that you are here today. Now, NASA has some really exciting goals related to flying aircraft. Can you give us a quick summary of what Advanced Air Mobility, aka AAM, is?
Yes, I'd love to give you a little bit about what I know about it. When we think of advanced air mobility, think of it as an air transportation system or an air highway, which will operate at lower altitudes, sometimes within urban and suburban areas, or sometimes more remote, less populated areas, focusing on safely transporting people and packages in new, highly automated aircraft. So much like the on-demand car services that many of us have used, advanced air mobility envisions a safe and efficient aviation option in addition to those transportation options we are already familiar with: travel by car, bus, train, boat, train, etc. So here on the slide, you see some cargo transport and consumer enterprise goods and services and public good. These are some examples of how we could safely and quickly move cargo, let's say from point A to point B, possibly from a large distribution center with goods moving to hundreds of different destinations. So a good example might be moving packages less than 5 pounds, or even moving, medical supplies and people, such as doctors and nurses, to remote and urban destinations.
Well, that's an excellent summary. You have a very unique background. Can you share it with us?
Sure. I did my undergraduate studies in business and marketing and advertising at the School of Journalism at The Ohio State University. I then was relocated and finished up at a small school, Centenary College, now named Centenary University in Hackettstown, New Jersey, where I received my Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration and Management. And I currently work at the Glenn Research Center, NASA Glenn Research Center, out in Cleveland, Ohio.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. We like to get the full picture of our role models here on the program. So what are your hobbies? You do anything interesting?
Yes, so I love life outside of work, have lots of hobbies. I like to run, I like to garden, be at the beach, love seafood, love eating, which most people like to do. We love our city. We're located in Cleveland, Ohio, and we have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame here. So we like to explore a lot of the city's, unique spots to visit. And of course, love spending time with family.
Oh, okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about your NASA family here. How did you actually get to the agency? How did you get to NASA?
So it was a journey. I actually started off born in Detroit, Michigan, raised in a small town outside of Flint, Michigan, if anyone is familiar with that. Then moved to Cincinnati, where I was raised, went to a small all-girls college prep school, which focused on science, math, the arts, And then after I graduated high school, I went to the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio, where I would focus on advertising through the School of Journalism. From there, I would be relocated to New Jersey, where I would have multiple jobs in multiple different fields, ranging from operations to graphic design, advertising, accounting, and finance. And then another relocation would take me to Cleveland, where I would eventually end up at NASA. Um, through some colleagues I had met, and they were looking for some people non-technical in business, and I had the background and applied, and the rest is history.
And you mentioned non-technical. Um, when NASA comes to mind, a lot of people often think about people having an engineering degree or science degree. What actually made you choose your degree in business?
So, like I said, at Ohio State, I went into the School of Advertising in the 80s. And at that time, there was no such thing as an advertising degree. So you had to go through the School of Journalism. And in the 80s, the advertising marketing sector was exploding. You know, we had gone from, in the 1800s, there was a shift from print media, which is newspapers, magazines, to radio, and then from radio to television to cable, which was, you know, in the 80s was the birth of the TV shopping networks, et cetera, MTV. And then fast forward to today, television to internet. In 1984, Apple put out their big Super Bowl commercial introducing Macintosh to the world. And so just the whole industry at the time that I was in college and looking for a career, this was just an exploding market and very disruptive market. And so it was exciting. There was a lot going on at the time, and so it inspired me to kind of go in that direction.
Okay. So now I'm curious. I know a lot of individuals say, I would never see myself. I thought I would never get the opportunity to actually work at NASA. So why do you say that? Why do you say that you never thought that you would actually get this opportunity to work at such a unique uh, place, a unique environment such as ours?
Right, right. Good question, because I know a lot of us probably think that, right? You know, NASA employs roughly 20,000 civil servants and approximately 60,000 contractor employees. And I always thought you had to be some sort of engineer to work at NASA. The reality is, it takes many different people to achieve what they have achieved, everyone from scientists to engineers, IT specialists, human resource specialists, budget analysts like me, accountants, writers, technicians, project and program administrative support. There's just so many different people that work together to break the barriers to achieve what sometimes seems impossible. And it makes it a very exciting workplace.
And in terms of budgeting, non-technical personnel at the agency, what does a lead resource analyst actually do at NASA?
So I like to say we all represent a piece of the pie. And when I say that, what I mean is everyone on the project, as you can see in the pie there, there's a lot of different people that make up a project and a program, is an important contributor and has an important role to play to contribute to the success of the project and mission. And so if you love math and you like being part of a team and are a good communicator, you could become a NASA lead analyst. If you were to become a budget analyst, subject matter expert at NASA, you would need to develop skill sets in all areas of the budget cycle, which include budget formulation and execution, analysis, monitoring, and oversight. And these functions involve planning, programming, budgeting, and execution on an annual basis. AAM is actually a prototype program, or I would call it a prototype program. It's dependent on funding to achieve their goals and objectives. And so it is my job to track the budget and costs throughout the project life cycle. What I do is I look for variances between what is actually happening and what we will expect to happen. I identify trends in charging month over month. I analyze data to ensure the data integrity is accurate and appropriately communicated to my team so informative decisions can be made. I think an easy way to understand what I do as a lead budget analyst is, you know, five things. We define, we measure, we collect, we analyze, and we interpret. And so that's kind of an easy process in which the budget analyst follows in order to make their program project successful. And the interesting thing about projects at NASA, I don't know if you all know this, but the NASA fiscal year actually begins October 1st and ends on September 30th, and that's called a fiscal year.
Okay. Now, you definitely have an impressive background here. You have awesome education, awesome experiences on this end. Have you ever had any particular influence in your life, maybe an educator or mentor in your life?
Yeah, I'd have to say I was really fortunate to have my last project manager. He has since retired. Really was a mentor. And what I loved about his style of leadership was that even though I was budget and I was part of the pie, he really included all of us on the team in decision making and processes and formulation. He was just very inclusive. The other thing I'd like to note is he welcomed the opportunity for all of us to be part of the adventure. So when people think of budget analysts, they may think of somebody sitting behind a computer, double screen, that whole thing. But he really, his style was to include everybody. So in this shot here, we're actually in front of the S3B. That was it's actually one of the oldest. This is a fun fact about the Viking S3B. It's behind me is it's one of the oldest operating airplanes in its class, and this year it's being retired and transported to the San Diego Space and Air Museum. Other aircraft that we've used along the way, such as the inactive Learjets, were given to a nonprofit school so students can learn to work on the aircraft. But it was these types of things where, you know, he reached back and really included everybody on the team and let us experience, you know, the really on the ground testing that we were doing as part of the project.
Hmm. Okay. You seem extremely passionate. I really love your answers, and I'm pretty confident everybody online is as well on this end. So, why do you like actually working at NASA?
I love working at NASA. It really is an opportunity. I have a great team that I'm surrounded by, just people from every walk of life, every background. We all support collectively the mission, right? We get to go to work and interact with many wonderfully talented people. From in this shot, there's chief engineers and lead engineers, project managers, a couple budget analysts in there, and everyone collectively contributes to the success of the project. And like I like to say, we learn from others. You never stop learning in a research and development environment. And what I've learned while at NASA, embrace change and remain humble.
That is expert advice, definitely for sure. So let's just take it back for a moment. You deal with finance, budgeting, amongst other things. How important is math in your career?
Math is very important. Strong computer skills, math skills are needed to assess and analyze the data and turn it into usable information. So you can pull out data, show it to your team, but you really need to be able to translate what you're seeing so that others can make informative decisions and paths forward. As lead analysts, if you became a lead analyst at NASA, you'd be taking large financial data sets and transforming them into understandable data for the project and program. I like to think of it as a roadmap. You know, we're taking different turns, will ultimately result in going one way or another. Taking the right turn equals success. Taking the wrong turn obviously could prevent us from reaching our destination.
Wow, that's an impressive analogy. Love it so much. Now, you're responsible for millions of dollars. So, how does NASA, or in this example, the Advanced Air Mobility prototype project, get their funding? I mean, is it magic?
uh, Yeah, there's a process, and this chart we developed to try to show you and actually teach you the process. So it starts off, the first little box there. Federal agencies submit budgets for review. So what does that really mean? Um, we have discretionary and mandatory spending. So at home, discretionary spending would be things like what we spend on recreation and entertainment versus your food bill, right? So one is fun things, the other one is pretty mandatory. Mandatory both at home and in the government are items that are not wanted but needed. So food, clothing, shelter, and then in the government, it would be things like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, student loans, things like that. A fun fact about mandatory spending, did you know that the government spends, mandatory spending accounts for 2/3 of all federal spending. So I thought that was a pretty big chunk of change, which leaves 1/3 for this discretionary spending, and that's where NASA's budget falls. Typically on or before the first Monday in February, the president submits a budget request to Congress for the next fiscal year. And like I said, it begins October 1st. You probably know from social studies classes or civics classes that there are 3 parts of Congress, which together form the US Congress, right? So there's the legislative, the executive, and their judicial. And so here the president submits a budget request to Congress, which is comprised of the House of Representatives and Senate. So when we say the House and Senate, that's what we're referring to. From there, the House and Senate set spending levels and budget resolution. They set targets for spending and taxes and identify any items that need to be resolved. And these are sent to the floor for a vote, and differences are resolved in the conference. The next box, House and Senate subcommittees, that's program funding through appropriations bills. They are set targets for spending and taxes and identify any items that need to be resolved. So these are sent to the floor for a vote, and differences are resolved in Congress. So there's 12 subcommittees in the House and Senate. Agriculture, as the FDA, there's commerce, justice, and science, there's defense, energy and water, financial services, homeland security, interior environment, labor, health, and human services, and education. You have the legislative branch, the military, construction, veterans affairs, the state foreign operations, and lastly, transportation, housing, and urban development. So you have these 12 committees that need to come to an agreement and send it back to the president to see, if he'll sign of these budgets. NASA actually falls under the Senate Commerce Subcommittee on Space, Science, and Competitiveness, and that's actually a subcommittee within the Committee on Commerce, Justice, and Science. So once they iron out, oh, go ahead.
No, question was who actually decides what projects actually get funded?
So once NASA is delivered an appropriation, so NASA never gets green dollars, so to speak. We get a budget appropriation, and that allows us to spend money in missions. And so the House and Senate and Congress establishes what the committee will, Commerce, Justice, and Science will actually fund. And then NASA, sometimes they have earmarked items, and sometimes they have NASA presents what they would like to do with the discretionary spending, and then they're given it a budget appropriation to go forward and do those things. But ultimately, the president has to sign all of this off, and if that doesn't happen, unfortunately, we start a year in what's called a continuing resolution. So what that means is a budget really hasn't been passed, and we continue operations under the current or prior fiscal year levels.
Okay, and you mentioned fiscal year. A lot of people are not really familiar with fiscal year versus annual year. Can you compare the two?
Right. So the calendar year, January through December 31st, is what we all kind of operate that calendar. And then the fiscal year in the government is October 1st through September 30th of that next year. And so that's called a fiscal year.
Okay, very good. Excellent. And let's see here. In terms of the graphic, let's just pull that up here for a moment so our audience can get the opportunity to take a look at it on this end. Okay. And you were basically saying that the president basically signs everything into law. And that
Right.
essentially puts everything on this end.
Right. So if he decides, he can either choose to sign it, stating that he's agreeing with the different things that have been presented to him, or he can veto it. And that's what I was saying. If it's vetoed, then we start the fiscal year in a continuing resolution. So unfortunately, we have started many fiscal years in continuing resolutions. It's important to note here, though, that if Congress needs to address policy changes within mandatory spending or tax law, the committees have to come up with a plan and report back to the budget committees. And then that process, then the budget committees combine all the plans into something called an omnibus package and is sent to the floor for a vote. So the House and Senate again work out differences, vote again, and send the final version to the president for signature or veto. So there's a lot of different things that go on before NASA actually gets in a budget appropriation.
Awesome. Okay. We actually have a question here from Mendini Trishala. And this person's question is what is your next professional plans, if any?
Wow, that's a really that's a great question. My next professional plans, I'd actually like to stay at NASA. Right now, I'm working on a special project that I've never done before, an opportunity to take advantage of, and so I'm able to prepare some costs for the procurement department and present the plan to NASA. So I'm working that. At NASA, what I love about it is you always have unique and new opportunities. So whether it's training or, as David had mentioned before, there's opportunities to teach others. So if you're in a point in your career where you can be a mentor and start mentoring, kind of the newer generation or the junior, folks coming into NASA, there's those opportunities. There's always new projects beginning and ending. Right now I just feel so fortunate to be part of advanced air mobility. This is for you guys. This is an emerging market. This is so relevant, and it's something that we're setting up the foundation for. And your generation will, be prepared if you stay in STEM to really take the groundwork and really launch it into, becoming this other transportation option that we have as people and human beings. So you guys are at a great point in your life where there's so much in advancements in technology happening. It's very motivating, and it motivates me to help others and teach others and have teams and share the knowledge, because when you do that, you actually you grow as a person, and you know your level of knowledge also grows from others. And there's things, it's just always a kind of a teaching, learning environment. And it really is stimulating for those people who like to keep changing and moving and growing and doing other things professionally. So I hope that answered your question. I'm very, very happy where I am at NASA. And I believe that this advanced air mobility project will be ongoing probably for the rest of the duration of my work life. So I'm excited to be part of it.
Do you do a lot of presentations and essentially in those presentations, are you doing a lot of mentorships and a lot of exchanging of knowledge with those?
Yes. So part of the role as a budget analyst is you are constantly presenting, to whether it's your project, your program, information. I'm part of the CFO organization, which is the Office of the Chief Financial Officer. And so there's a lot of reporting, a lot of presenting, a lot of sharing the information. And with that, as you continue on, I guess in any career, but at NASA especially, you have the opportunity to mentor maybe those people helping you out at other centers. You can share your knowledge and experiences and help them understand processes. The government is a very complex organization, and there's a lot to learn. So coming in fresh and new, there's a lot to learn, and it's always so great when you have someone who's willing to kind of help you, guide you, and kind of learn the ropes. So there's several opportunities. I feel like I'm presenting a lot, but it's great because we're always growing as people. You're able to mentor people. You're able to help people out with different things, and it's just a great environment. I really think the environment at NASA really is one where you can really grow as not only a person but professionally.
Absolutely, I concur with you entirely. You make it seem really easy. I mean, I know you're really confident in your repertoire on this end, but do you have any challenges in your job that you have to face every day?
Challenges. I think, recently we're all kind of experiencing the same challenges. This whole COVID-19, kind of threw us off for a loop. I think we all thought it'd be just a couple weeks, and there's been challenges along the way with just that whole experience of not seeing maybe your colleagues. Or I had one project end, and we had an opportunity to gather in person to culminate the entire 10-year project, and we weren't able to do that, and say goodbye. Many people went different ways. So, yeah, I think COVID has presented a lot of challenges this past year, but, with every, difficult experience, there's usually some silver lining. So what we've learned is, to embrace technology, and thank goodness for Teams and platforms such as this, where we can actually still see each other and share ideas and collaborate. And we all know that there's, a light at the end of the tunnel, and that this too shall pass, and that we'll all be back at work in some capacity, maybe not the way, we were used to before, but it has not stopped us. The greatest thing about NASA is it has not stopped us for completing our mission and our objectives. So we've been able to persevere even through this very challenging and unique time.
Absolutely. Albert Einstein comes to mind when he basically said, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. So, we want to open up an opportunity for students on this end and for you to answer a very important question here. Now, what would you say to our audience or students who are actually struggling with pursuing an actual STEM career?
I love this question, David. I too struggled with this as a young person. I would have to say, number one, I have a couple different things I'd like to say about this. Um, be prepared. So, what does that mean? Be prepared both mentally and physically. My oldest son became an Eagle Scout, and their motto is "Be prepared." And what does that really mean? It means prepare yourself for what you want to become. Envision yourself in that role, and train yourself to physically and mentally be prepared, so that when the time comes and the opportunity presents itself, that you're ready to take advantage of that opportunity. So that'd be the first thing: be prepared both mentally and physically. The second thing, I think, and this resonates with me, and I know it does with you, and we had some of our pre-talks, is don't let anyone tell you you can't do it, right? Capitalize on your uniqueness. We are all unique. I am from a very loving and supportive family with many professionals in medicine, law, communications, engineering, all those really good, smart, uh, you know, careers. And I really never thought personally that I would have a career at NASA, because I thought I needed to go into engineering to work here. If you would have told me or asked me 10 years ago, I would be working at NASA and involved in this incredible project within air mobility, I probably would have laughed. But after being at NASA, what it's made me realize is that we all have different talents we bring to the table. And it takes many different kinds of people to make it all work, from all over the world with all different backgrounds. And so you don't just have to go into engineering to work at NASA. There's many fields within NASA that you can go into and still be relevant and still be impactful and make a difference. One last thing I wanted to say about this, for kids who don't think that they can do STEM. When I was a couple years ago, in 2015, I had never run. I was one of those kids. I was a heavier kid, would get winded easily. I was active, but always looking for that sport that I could be good at, something I could really be good at. And my husband turned to me one day and said, you work out every day, you have the stamina. Why don't you try running a race? And I looked at him and laughed. I thought he was kidding. And so I set a goal. So that's really important to set a goal. So in 2015, I began training for a 13.1 mile half marathon. And not only did I just start training for it, I wanted it to be really, incredible. And I wanted it to be an experience I would never forget. So I went online and researched the world's largest marathon, and ended up applying for it and getting in. And I couldn't believe it. It's called the Great North Run. It's 13.1 miles. You run from Newcastle, this is in England, Newcastle upon Tyne, to South Shields in northeast England. And if you would have asked me once again, would I ever run a half marathon midway in my life, not being really somebody who I would feel would be, this great runner, I probably would have laughed at you. But I set a goal. Now, don't look at my time, because my time wasn't the greatest. But the story is that I started something and I completed it. I was so proud of myself. It was one of those moments in life where you go, I did it. Nobody did it for me. Nobody got the job for me. Nobody did the work for me. It took all of me to do what I needed to do to complete that goal. So in summary, if you set a goal and you prepare mentally and physically, understanding the challenges and rewards, and persevere, I'm convinced that everyone in attendance right now can begin taking steps to achieve their dreams. I would just say, go for it, reach for the stars. Remember, this is my favorite, remember that success is the result of many failed attempts. And so as you reference somebody, I'm going to reference Walt Disney. He was actually fired from Kansas City Star because his editor felt he lacked imagination and good ideas. So, if we look up people who, the greatest failures in life, it's all the greatest people who are somebody we know today have had failure. And it's okay to fail. And I think at NASA, we understand that the best, because we test and test and test to make sure things are safe. Testing is a big part of what we do. And it takes a lot of failures to finally figure out, what works and what's safe and what's appropriate for that mission. And so you guys, you're all enrolled in the STEM program. You are on the right path. And just remember, we're laying the advanced air mobility groundwork for the next generation, which could be you. So pick it up and run with it. And you are all on the right path. You've got this. Good luck to each and every one of you. And thank you for your time today.
And that's absolutely the answer on this end. Three things: believe, achieve, and succeed. So it looks like we're just about out of time today. But before we go, we have a student challenge for you. So we're challenging you to build your own rubber band helicopter. So you're going to get the opportunity to design and build a mini copter to demonstrate how blades from a propeller makes objects fly. So you can see to the link there in the chat for the activity, so you can begin completing your aircraft. We ask that you please share with us your work on this activity at hashtag NextGenSTEM. Now, two more things before we wrap up. I wanted to say thank you so much, Julie, for coming on today's program. It was great talking with you and learning more about your amazing work and the great things happening at NASA Glenn. Lastly, join us for our next STEM Stars on June 26th at 2 p.m. Eastern. And we're actually going to learn more about advanced air mobility, except from Red Jensen. He's a small unmanned aircraft systems chief pilot at Armstrong. Now, how do you become a small drone pilot at NASA? Well, tune in next week and find out. Thank you for attending. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you all next time. Take care and have a wonderful day.